Oh, I can only turn on my speaker if I want to talk to Chris. All right, boy, this is really one complicated setup. All right, Chris. This is extremely hard to do, actually.
Maybe we shouldn't take questions during the talk.
Have Zoom. Yeah, so what we're going to do, folks, is have an open forum now. And what I'd like to ask is that if you'd like to make, hello, everybody, we're going to start the meeting. Everybody, can you please hold? Yeah, we're going to start the, yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so welcome to the April meeting of the Boston Audio Society. I'm Ken Schwartz, the president of the society, and I want to first thank John for arranging this fantastic venue for us. This is really very comfortable. And welcome to our Zoom guests, and welcome to our featured presenter, Ed Ting, and guests joining us today. Thank you very much for coming. We're just going to begin. It's a little bit of a challenge always with Zoom and in person at the same time. So please bear with us. What we'll have to do is ask for remote people to raise their hand and make it clear that they want to participate in the open forum or with questions, and then we'll have to weave you in and out in order to avoid having feedback in the conference room. And the other thing I ask is everybody in the conference room, please do not connect to the Zoom meeting and have your own audio added to the complexity that we've already got. But we'll sort things out if anything happens and carry on. So we're pretty good at AV stuff.
So our microphone is here.
Yeah, this is the microphone that's going to be picking us up when we begin the meeting proper.
Okay, so if he has to say something at the end of the table, will they be able to hear him?
That we're going to deal with that.
Okay.
But, right now, it's going through my computer.
Okay.
Because then I'm able to, present and welcome everybody. So this is my turn, and then I'm going to shut up. So now that we've opened the meeting, we will transition to our usual open forum for the first 15 minutes. And there's an opportunity for people in the room and Zoom guests to share observations or questions, and then we'll transition from there to Ed's presentation. All right. So yes, Alvin.
I'd like to, I don't know how audible I am.
Well, so now we have to switch to the room. Okay. Thank you for bearing with us. Thank you.
Okay, and we are picking up, we got a good output level here, according to this.
Okay, I'd like to introduce two people who will be our future guests. We'll establish a date maybe today. And one is Obama Dostal, gentleman, and May Dostal.
May Ahmed.
May Ahmed. And they're local to Boston. And Dostal is a cable retailer, manufacturer, and he's been doing this for many years, right? Many years. So he will prove to us that there's a difference between poor cables and good cables. But anyway, this is a future guest. And do you want to say anything before we move on?
No.
Move on.
What company?
You said it.
What?
Name of your company?
It's M101.
The local or?
But it's in Winchester, right here.
In Winchester, oh, okay, Winchester.
So we are 10 minutes away from this site.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to that. But tell us, what is the significance of M101?
Ed probably can tell you what that is.
Oh, it's a Messier object?
Yes.
Excellent.
Oh, my goodness.
He's also into astronomy. So.
Okay. Now there's a double header.
Oh, the Pinwheel Galaxy.
Yes, that's one.
Okay. And that inspired you to name the cable after it?
I decided to make a company.
Okay.
Company and all the names of the products. Nova, Supernova, Hypernova, everything's there.
Okay.
So all the other Messier objects up to 100 were already taken?
No, it was easier to get the website name M101.
Got it.
as well.
So,
So
well, thank you. Okay.
so
So
we are on 101.com.
great. So who else would like to speak? Richard.
I just want to apologize to the audio world for having purchased an Apple Vision Pro device, which is the culmination of every science fiction story I ever read as a child in the 50s and 60s, because it isn't quite ready for prime time, and that it's very hard to control. You should really have a trackpad and a keyboard rather than depend on its virtual keyboard, or thinking you can look at something and it will light up and you click on it. It doesn't really work that well. It doesn't work that smoothly. But the audio is what's really shocking. There are little ports in the side of the headband that aim at your pineye, and you set up the Apple Vision Pro by taking your iPhone and taking a picture of your outer ears, which then gets calculated into the way the audio is represented, and it sounds great. You are completely in the space that you're looking at. It's really shocking. There's no deep bass, but it works. The device works very well with Apple Mac AirPod Pros, which go over your Macs, which go over your ears. So you can use those with the Apple Vision Pro. But the thing is that the immersion, video immersion, is like 360 degrees. So you're looking at, but the best way to describe it is as an intrapsychic projector, because it looks like you're looking at the world, but you can move the world around with these little buttons. So you clearly are just looking at the inside of your own head. So it really does interfere with your sense of objectivity. It's much like being stoned.
I never heard of that. I didn't know that.
But it's not fun. There aren't that many apps for it, but even watching regular YouTube is wonderful, because it's a huge picture the size of the wall in front of you, and it's close to your face, but you don't have to work very hard. Your lenses don't work very hard to accommodate to it, so it doesn't feel like it's close. You're looking at it with not using your accommodation of your lens. And it's 4K in each eye, so it's effectively an 8K picture, and it's gorgeous, and it's beautiful, and it's expensive.
What does it cost?
$4,000.
Richard,
Three-dimensional?
Put that in a projector.
have you looked at a 3D movie with it?
Yes, it's great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, it actually does 3D versions of any 2D still picture. Like I can look at a picture of me from 1971, and it's right there, and I can almost reach out and touch that guy on the shoulder. It is science fiction, and it's the holodeck on the Enterprise.
So it's not the 3D type where you feel you walk among the musicians. That's not the type of immersion.
Well, you can walk around.
Yeah.
And here they come now. And you can walk around the room. You don't want to walk among the musicians.
So in other words, I've seen the 3D immersion like Sony has, where you can actually walk between musicians and get a sense that the musician is next to you and the other.
Well, you can definitely get that when you the picture will stay where you put it, even though you weren't the stuff, and I could put it there and walk over there and go into the kitchen. And the sound comes with me, so it sounds like they're talking right next to me. But I have to look around the corner to see a picture in the kitchen, and in the music room of the kitchen. It's really, you don't want to be in. I mean, you're right next when you're in India. There's a thing immersive India. The elephant walks right by you. You can't smell it, but everything else.
Next version.
Yeah.
It's an upsell upgrade. It's the smell of it, but
I'm very disappointed the smell of vision isn't available.
it's really great. And except for the deep bass, you don't need headphones. But if you want any deep bass, you need to have some of that close with your so you can develop deep
So
bass.
Richard, there's this software you can use to take a still photo and animate it. So you can take photos of family, of friends, or famous people from the past, and then they suddenly come to life. I've never actually tried this, but you see advertisements for this in Facebook and so on. And you can subscribe to this and send them your picture, and then presumably they'll do this as an app. But would that be something you could use with this headset and then have people, from the grave come back and
they're close enough. There's some still photos. The still photos are made 3D.
Yeah.
But it takes another level of development for it to be able to make 3D out of motion picture.
Yeah.
But things that are shot in Apple Immersive are much better than the corny 3D we saw when we were watching 3D movies.
Yeah.
But I haven't yet figured out how to get the Blu-ray signal into the Apple Vision Pro, so I haven't yet tried to watch a Blu-ray 3D movie of the Apple Vision Pro. But it probably doesn't want you to, but it really has like all of the Disney has a whole range of movies that are in 3D, but they're mainly modern craft movies. But they're gorgeous to look at.
Yeah.
The Apple stores, if one's near you in driving distance, go and get a demo. They'll give you a demo. And it takes about 25-30 minutes to have the demo. So it's
If you
worth
set
it.
it up, it takes 30 minutes or runs 30
Right,
Well,
right.
Yeah, and what they do too is they adjust for your eyes, so you don't have to wear glasses. So they'll match a lens. They'll go in the back room, they'll take your glasses and check your glasses and then put one of several different lens powers or optics in it. So that takes 7, 8, 9 minutes. Yeah.
I have custom the part if you buy one, you send your eyeglass prescription to Zeiss in Germany, and they make lenses that come back without a tariff. And then you go right into the device. I made sure to buy it before the
Did
tariff.
you buy this before the tariffs?
I
Is that
that's why I bought it. I wanted to get it
Yeah.
for another.
or it becomes prohibitively expensive?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Do you,
All right.
do you use your distance glasses or your reading glasses?
The
With the Boston audience
problem is, there was a guest mode, but I have to set it up for each person. And obviously you can't have two people using it at the same
Yeah.
time.
It's not very exciting for everybody else.
No, in fact, I complained bitterly to Apple that we should be able to project what we're watching onto the TV, so we don't have to be that isolated from everybody else in the room.
Yeah.
You can project your visual field onto your TV, but you can't project the movie you're watching the way you're watching it for copyright reasons, who knows why. But there are a lot of things that need to be improved. So that it's great if you live by yourself and nobody gets mad at you for watching by yourself.
It's the
There
Walkman.
should be a microphone.
All right,
I got one thing.
Yeah.
okay, yep, so let me see if there's any questions or comments from our Zoom audience.
Yes, so
Raise
do
your
you
hand in the
use
Zoom
your
audience if
distance
you want to
glasses or your
say something.
reading glasses in
Okay, if you
there?
don't, oh, Eric, Gary, I'm gonna unmute you.
Yes. Oh,
Maybe you're
I was
already-
muted.
We can't
Okay,
hear you,
just,
Gary.
in
Is it
those,
on here that
can
we
you hear me
use?
now?
How would it come through? I'm gonna,
Can you hear me
yeah,
now?
then you have to
Yeah,
turn
put
off,
it through your speaker.
then turn off your speaker. Hold on one second, Gary. All right, we're gonna play with fire here. No, you gotta turn off.
No, I don't have my, no, my mic is off.
Somebody
rubbing two sticks together.
That didn't work. There's gotta be another mic in the room.
Let me shut my mic off, just
Okay.
in case.
Yeah, I think that's the one that's picking it
Okay,
up.
so
Can you hear me? Mhm. Hello, hello.
I can hear you from here. So I'm remote.
I was just curious, do you use your reading glasses in a viewer like that or your distance glasses?
Yeah, so what he said was that you take your glasses off when you wear the goggles because they have built-in correction.
Reading or
Yeah,
distance?
have myself.
You have the correction built in just right for the virtual projection that you're looking at. So you're looking at a screen after all, so it's going to be pretty up close.
So it would be your reading
It would be, yeah, it would be like a reading correction. It'd be very up close because the goggles are right in front of your eyeballs.
All right, all right.
If you only need presbyopic reading collection, they'll be happy. I assume they won't bother your distance vision if all you need is presbyopic reading correction on the
Yeah.
bottom.
Anyway, you're looking at a
But I don't
screen.
know
You're
if
not
I-
looking out anywhere. You're looking at a little screen right in front of your eyeballs. So that's the way the correction.
Hence the question.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know what correcting, I don't know enough about the optics about how they're correct. As far as I can tell, when I look at the screen, even though the screen looks physically like it's 3 feet in front of me and 10 feet wide and 20 feet high, I don't feel my eyes having to work hard to accommodate to something that's so up. Which is why I think of this as an intrapsychic projector. It's really not, it doesn't feel like it's using your eye and vision, it feels like it's inside your head. And you're manipulating it inside your head.
Yeah.
I imagine I'm a Ukrainian first-person drone killer. That kind of experience.
Yeah. Well, that's got to be well, we already know what the killer app for this thing is. We don't have to talk about it. But the second killer app would be, these war simulations where you're actually out there, doing violence. Don't you
I'm
think?
sure it's not far away.
Yeah.
I'm sure. It's probably too slow for gaming yet. But
That's got to be coming.
it's gotta be coming.
All right.
That's where all the money is.
Well, after the thing which we don't talk about in Play Company. The first application for all of these technologies. These technologies are $0 billion opportunity until, of course, they discover.
Or.
Well, that's the second. Yeah, the first one's born.
Oh.
I'm going to put in the Zoom chat a link that shows how corrective lenses are handled with the Apple Vision Pro.
There isn't, there isn't any point in 3D, so yeah, but it's definitely an improvement over
Okay.
2D, over there on the screen.
Traditional. Okay.
No, it's a little embarrassing.
I've got a comment on that. I've seen some YouTube videos of a very inexpensive way to simulate that with infants. They put the infant in like in a hole, they're holding their infant and they're watching on the screen. It's like a roller coaster going through a road, and they move the infant in the direction that you would be going, as if you were on the roller coaster, and they react the same way. It's hilarious.
Well, you know, if there's interest in this, we could have a future session where we try this stuff out. This- You can do it with the,
To set this out,
well,
need a month.
we got time, we got time. All right, so to be continued. Any other comments from online, or we will switch over to our feature? Oh, go ahead. David, did you have a question or a comment? This is open forum.
I completed work on my RIAA test CD. This might seem kind of a contradiction using a CD to test preamps, but it's a CD which has a series of tones burned on it, which are the inverse of the RIAA characteristic. So you play this on the CD player through an attenuator into the phono input, and if the phono input is correct, then all the tones will come out with the same amplitude. But all you're looking for is the difference, what we are using measurement.
How do you measure the amplitude? Do you hear it?
Switch back to the main mic.
Since we have, since the tone level is also fixed on CD, if you have the published specifications of the curve, you can use it on anything to measure the frequency response. Correct? In other words, this has to be, this is the
Phono preamps.
right, but let's say you don't, but it's a flat, whatever. In other words, it's an accurate
It's
curve.
not flat, it's just.
Right, it's not flat, but it's an accurate curve.
The tones are accurate,
So therefore,
they're spot frequencies.
if you, let's say, use it into an amplifier without the phono preamp,
Well, why would you want to do that?
just asking the question, is it possible?
Al likes to measure things.
Well, it's not, it wouldn't work.
Because the level would be too low?
No, because it's an inverse characteristic, so it's going like this. So what purpose would it be to measure that?
Okay.
So anyway, your CD player may not be perfect at that. So there's a series of test stones that are at constant amplitude. And that way you can calibrate your CD player if you want to get to the last tenth of a decimal.
Well, that's the right curve. Okay, I see.
So I'm not sure if there's really any commercial prospect. It's finished. And it would come with a pair of attenuators, 46 dB attenuators. If you had a moving coil input, you probably need a 60 dB attenuator. That's special.
How much is it?
I thought $55 to cover the physical cost of attenuators. Physical CD.
Well, as it happened just last week, I was testing preamps RIA curve. So yeah, hang in there. There's people are doing this.
This would be a better test.
Yeah.
It
Well,
turned
I
out
was just doing it visually. I couldn't
Oh, okay.
actually give you a specification.
Well, it's like a 1, 2, 5 sequence. It's not extremely fine, but then if you have a curve, it's going to be very slow anyway. Most of the errors in the 500 to 2000 range probably fine constants. It turned out to be surprisingly difficult to get the tones that accurate. Turns out I had to get help from Gary Garrard. If you specify on a workstation, generate tone and specify 3.7657 decibels, it'll say yes. But then when you look at the result, it's rounding it off to the nearest tenth of a decimal. So it's not really doing it correctly. So Gary Gaylor found that on his workstation, he would specify that like the nearest level, and then you would alter it by hundreds of dB levels, and that would give him the actual. Anyway.
Okay. Well, I think we're nearing the bottom of the hour, so let's switch over to Ed, who's going to give us a presentation today about audio nervosa, of all things. And let me introduce Ed. I've known Ed now for at least 25 years. All right, yeah, he's gonna take care of that. So I'll fill the space while he's taking care of that. So I've known him for at least 30 years. When I was in Japan, I came across Ed because I was getting crazy about things amateur astronomy, and Ed's easy to find if you start doing some studying about amateur astronomy, because he's a well-known contributor to Sky and Telescope magazine, and he has a website that reviews all sorts of equipment, and yeah, he's been doing this for a long time. Then when we moved to the US from Japan, I made an arrangement to see him, and yeah, we've just been good friends ever since. But he's much more than an astro guy. He's also an audio guy. He's a cyclist. He's, I guess he's a bit of a polymath, because when you went to Dartmouth for a master's, you also ducked into a conducting course. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he took a conducting course and made a video for his YouTube channel about it. And I commend it to you because it's really quite a thing. Yeah, it's very interesting. So I knew that at some point we'd have to have him in to do a presentation to the group about his audio stuff. So we're really excited to have you here, Ed. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to ask, is it all right for people to ask questions aside from audio if they ask a question about
Sure,
Astro?
you're running the show.
Well, I promise no questions about department store telescopes or eyepieces. Okay, but everything else is fair game. Okay.
All right.
So Ed, from there, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. It's an honor to be here. I almost didn't make it. I broke my collarbone. My collarbone is broken. It's right here. I was going down the stairs and I was taking the first step and a cat ran between my legs and I was trying not to step on him and I went all the way down the wooden staircase, hit my head on my back several times, landed on my shoulder blade, and spent Easter in the ER at Manchester, where they were short-staffed and I was in pain. So, but I wasn't even sure I could make it here, but Pat was nice enough to drive me, and he's an audio guy too. So thank you very much for having me. I used to begin every talk by saying, "Can you hear me?" Used to say that until one day after I gave a talk, somebody came up to me and said, "If I can't hear you, how am I supposed to tell you I can't hear you?" Okay, so don't say that. It's a meaningless thing to say. All right, so most of you, if you know me at all, you know me from astronomy, but I do this like almost every day. I just don't talk about it much. So it's really been interesting to put together this presentation to just show you how I see things. So I do this, we are on Zoom, and I always put this slide here. This is a test slide because sometimes it advances here, but it doesn't advance for the people on Zoom. So can somebody on there give you a thumbs up and tell you that this slide did in fact advance? Can somebody give us a thumbs up? Did the slide advance? I hope so, because this is a huge pain to fix. It's huge.
So,
What do you
Chris,
mean
can you
advance?
give us a thumbs up if you can hear us?
What do you mean advance?
Gary can hear us.
I see Chris giving a thumbs up.
Oh, okay, very good.
And did the slide advance?
What do you mean by
It
advance?
says, did this advance on the slide that advanced? In case you think this might be the previous slide.
Yes, he saw the advance. Okay,
It did.
good.
All right, so good.
Excellent.
We're all in sync. Wonderful.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now, I was talking with somebody the other day, and this question came up. Why do we do this? I mean, I do it every day. That's the interior of an audio store, but I have been to people's houses that are worse than that. And I was telling Pat on the way down, there's a guy I know in Portsmouth who bought a system from Sound by Singer back when Sound by Singer was in business. And if you spend enough money, you get not only the system, but you get 2 men in a van for 2 days. They get a hotel room and then they come back. And, you know, the JM Focal Lab Utopias, you're not going to lift those things by yourself. And you need to tow them in. You're not going to do that. You know, those guys will just sit there and listen to records with you for 2 days. So there are people who have systems that are worse than this. But I didn't start off that way. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. I grew up in Attleboro, Massachusetts, got moved around a lot. Now I'm living in southern New Hampshire. But this was my first audio system. So they gave it to me somewhere around 1976. And at first, I didn't even know what it was for. I didn't even want it. Like, why did you give this thing to me? But gradually, I learned that this would bring the outside world into me. And I remember just putting it under my pillow at night, listening to Red Sox games. And my parents told me I was listening to it too much at some point, and they told me you got 1 hour a day. So they would monitor, right? Asian parents, right? I mean, doing math homework, not listening to the Red Sox. So at night, I would put that under my pillow. And Radio Mystery Theater was Thursday nights, and it was wonderful because if you're falling asleep, it's very easy to, you know, as a kid, imagining what's going on. And I got American Top 40 every Sunday morning. Casey Kasem would count them down. And they would count them down, and I would sit there and listen to it, and I would get out a pad of paper, and I would write down the top 40 every week. Okay, and I really wish I did this for years. I wish I had that stack of papers. But what I really hated was that it started off as a 3-hour show, and then for some reason, about halfway through, they went to a 4-hour show because I guess they could sell more commercials. So it was an extra hour I had to go every Saturday morning just to find out what song was #1. So the first or second day I had the antenna extended. You see these collapsible antennas. It was sitting on the bed, and I sat right there on it, and I bent the antenna. So for the rest of its life, it had a broken antenna. I had no idea how to fix it. Okay, so the problem was I was listening to this thing too much. I was just discovering music, and it took a 9-volt battery, and the battery would wear out. So what's a kid to do who doesn't have a job, doesn't have any money, but needs batteries to power his transistor radio? Well, those of you who were around back in the 1970s, looks like some of you were, the Radio Shack used to have this thing called Battery Club. Anybody remember the Battery Club?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the Battery Club this was their cheap, they're really bad batteries, okay? and then on the bottom, there's January through December, and they would either hole punch it or they would mark it out, okay? The problem with this is that the batteries didn't last a month. They were terrible batteries. But if you were around at that point, southeastern Massachusetts, at one point, there were more Radio Shacks in this country than there were McDonald's and Walmart's put together. I mean, they would franchise anybody, okay? I was a kid, I didn't understand all this, but I understand the owners just really hated this. They were the Subway of their time. You know, you open a Subway and your buddy decides to open a Subway at the other end of the strip mall, they'll let him do it, okay? So after school or on Saturday afternoons, I would ride my bike around Attleboro, South Attleboro, North Attleboro, and even Pawtucket if I could get that far, with a stack of these battery cards, and I would walk in every Radio Shack and I would just collect them, okay? I'm sure the owners of these stores loved this, seeing this kid come in every Saturday morning doing this. But it really instilled for me, I sort of morphed into this, a love for Radio Shack. And those of you who were around then, these guys were serious players back then, and I in fact have Radio Shack catalog. I still remember the ads from here. And, you know, young boys of a certain age will read certain types of magazines under the covers. These were the magazines that I read under the covers. And you have Arthur Fiedler endorsing this system, and you had Peter Nero on another one. And this is this is Charles Napier with the CV40s. And they really understood how to sell things back then, because everything in here, it made you want it. I mean, you go to the components section and there'd be like chokes, like 10 millihenries. Really? You know what? I think I want one of those.
I want a millihenry.
I have to have it. But those of you who were around then, it was possible back in the day, in one afternoon, you could go from Nantucket Sound to Tech Hi-Fi and hit a couple of Radio Shacks along the way. And so my dad, we didn't have a lot of money, and you know, my dad and I, he was from the old country, but we didn't have a lot to say to each other. He has his values. I wanted to be an American kid, and so there's a lot of stuff we disagreed on. But one thing we did bond over was audience. We would go around to these stores, and we go home, we talk about what we heard, what'd you like, you know, what might we buy. But the Hi-Fi book, does anybody remember this book?
Mhm.
Fantastic piece of advertising. Come up and look at this afterwards. The photography in here is just, it's way better than it has to be. And to this day, I found a copy on eBay not too long ago. I still have some of these pages like semi-memorized from back then. And these pages stuck to my mind. Realistic, looks good inside and out, which is true for this particular receiver. It was not particularly true for some of the other models. And I've had people who know such things tell me that to this day, nobody is really sure who made all of this stuff. Because if you remember back in the 70s, you know, Pioneer receivers, they had a look to them, that silver faceplate and the big eye. Techniques, they had their look. You know, Marantz, they had their look with the gyroscopic tune, okay? There was no look to realistic. They all looked different. I mean, that's because they were just kind of sourcing things from wherever they could brand label the stuff from. And again, to this day, people who know these things don't even know where the stuff came from.
So, Ed, are you sharing your slides
Yeah.
at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember this one. This is the one I wanted because Arthur Fiedler endorsed. Has to be good, right? I was a kid. I didn't know, right? I remember once there was a Radio Shack in the South Shore Plaza. This was right after they enclosed it. And if you remember where that was, the Nantucket Sound was like right across the hallway. So I mean, like the market was such that would support such a thing. But they had this receiver on, and it was one of the realistic speakers. It wasn't the Mach 1s, but one of the ones with the 8-inch woofer and the passive radiator on it. And they had it turned up so loud that all you heard was clipping distortion through the speakers. And the beat of the music would make the lights dim, as you know. And as a kid, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I thought that was good, right? We all know that's not good, right? When the lights dim, the power supply can't supply enough power. But just to show you, back in 1977, how popular this stuff was, those are the wattages of all of the amplifiers in this catalog. I mean, to have a 3.5, a 7, a 12, a 16, 18, I mean, all this, the market would support that because, before the internet and before cell phones and before cable TV and all the streaming and all of this is what we did. We gather around the stereo at night, and TV wasn't what it is today. So this one took me a long time to assemble. This was Attleboro, Massachusetts, and I went through shoe boxes full of photos and scanned photos, and I could not find a picture of the audio system, which I cannot fathom because we gather around that thing every night. So, but that's what our house looked like, and we were in a sort of a lower middle class house in Attleboro. But my dad, like I said, liked audio, and the receiver that he had was the Fisher 220. It was this. So look at this. It's 55 watts, $329. Consumer price index, depending on where you look, almost 10 to 1. So this is a significant investment for someone who didn't make a lot of money. We had the Fisher speakers. They were awful, as you can imagine speakers from the 1970s were. And it had a weird voicing. I don't know if we have any Fisher fans here, but this was just coming off, the late 1960s, early 1970s, coming off of the tube era. And they voiced these things to sound like tube amps. They were tubby and warm, and there wasn't a lot of treble, and it was just all sort of this tubby mid bass. And I don't know if that was done on purpose or not, or if this was just because this is how they expected amps to sound at the time. But I like this. No ad man can do it justice. Really, they knew how to sell things back then, didn't they? So then it was decided that we needed a turntable. And back then, if you wanted a turntable that was above the department store Drek and the mass market Japanese stuff, you pretty much had two options. You had Garrard and you had Dual. Remember Dual turntables? You go to the dealer and they would have it propped up on something like this at a 45-degree angle, and they would play a record just to show you that it would play a record at 45 degrees. And therefore, that must be a good turntable. It has to be. This was the start of what I'm calling my lifelong troubled relationship with turntables. I've never had a turntable that was 100% functional, and this was one of the worst. For no apparent reason, at random points, it would drop the right channel. We never figured out why. My dad was an engineer, he was kind of training me to troubleshoot this stuff. We replaced the cartridge. We replaced the tone arm cable. We replaced the cartridge wires. We replaced the head shell. That's what we really thought it was for a long time, because there were 4 spring-load things in the head shell. We eventually replaced the amplifier in case it was a phono stage. It didn't matter. The right channel would drop out, and sometimes it would be a few seconds, and sometimes you'd lose it for the whole day, and you'd have to stop playing records, you'd have to come back the next day for a record. So the whole point was you could never relax when listening to a record, because at some point, the right channel was going to drop out. Okay, so my lifelong troubled relationship with turntables drove me to my lifelong love of the cassette tape. And that is the cassette deck that my dad bought. And I remember that the keys didn't even go down right. It was not well made. But here's what you would do. So as soon as you bought a record, around that, there were TDK people, and then there were Max L people. I was a TDK guy. Yes. That was how my TDK meant, right? So what you would do is you get the record, and say there were 10 tracks on the record, top 40 record, whatever, and you would record them, and you would hope that it would get through one track without the right channel dropping out. And you could sort of work your way through the record, and then once you had the cassette tape, then you had it, right? And then you could never have to play the record again. So to me, the cassette tape, that's what it represented to me. For my birthday one year, they bought me this, which seemed impossibly big and expensive at the time. And the reason I wanted that one is it had 2 functions that I really wanted. Number 1, it got TV reception. And number 2, it had a pause button on the cassette player, okay? Why would I want that? Okay, I'm a 12-year-old boy, and I set out to record the complete, anybody want to guess? I'm 12 years old, science-minded young boy, and I want to record all of the audio of
2001.
Very close. I set out to get all 79 episodes of Star Trek.
Oh, boy.
Okay. This was tough because it didn't have any money. Well, the problem was paying for the cassette tapes. And so by this time I was old enough to kind of do, errands, and I had an allowance, but all of my allowance money went to cassette tapes. And I couldn't get the ones that were 3 in a pack with no label like this. I had to have the ones with the case on them. And what I would do is I would take this piece of paper out, and then I would draw on it. I'm a graphic artist. And then I would do all 79 episodes. So here's the problem, okay? An episode of Star Trek is 53 minutes long. Today, if you watch an hour-long program, it's 41 minutes and 19 minutes worth of commercials, something like that. So they're correct. But back then, it was 53 minutes. So here is the philosophical question. Do you buy a C60 cassette, or do you buy a C90 cassette? And then edit the thing. Could never figure that out. Because 90, you could get 2 of them, but it would be edited. And what do you edit? So the pause button was there to edit. Okay, so, and I think it was channel 56 at the time, showed Star Trek at 8 o'clock. And then on the weekends, I think it was channel 10, something like 10 o'clock. It was pretty late. But if it was internal to the boombox that I had, okay, it had VHF TV on it. So if it was on a VHF channel, it would be direct, no microphones involved, really good, clean recording. If it was on UHF, I had a problem because I had this thing where I was like, Mom, we can't talk for the next hour, okay? And I had this little TV, and I would turn it up just enough, and I made this foam cover that went over this and went over the TV. I knew exactly how to set the levels. And it took me the better part of 2 years to get all of Star Trek. I really wish I had those today. I can't find any of them. They were in cases. I had them color-coded by season and all of them. And I also had the little markings on them, whether they were direct inside the recorder or whether I had it recorded from microphones. But this was the beginning of me discovering that there were different kinds of sound. Okay? So LP had a sound. FM, I discovered I didn't like very much at all. I was recording top 40 and whatever the top song. I had a mixtape of all the top #1 songs from 1975 through about 1978, and the different kinds of cassettes, and then live recording. Everything was different, but I dubbed everything. And when anybody on the block got a new album, I would say, "Can I just borrow that?" Like, not just for like the 40 minutes, because it would take me all night to dub the thing sometimes because of the darn turntable. But
And we have a question from the Zoom audience.
Okay.
Could you please check to make sure your screen is being shared?
it is.
Okay, because right now it's your face, so they're missing
Oh.
your screen being shared.
How about that?
Thank you. Hopefully we get both. We do. Okay, that's great. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
People on Zoom are seeing my. That's why I asked if my screen was.
Yeah.
slide was it.
Yeah, so that we were getting questions about that, and I think at last we figured out that it wasn't shared.
So it's not the case. Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so the disadvantage of this is I have lost my presenter's view. I do not know what the next slide is. Okay. All right. So I would dub every album that my friends got. Okay. And because I'm a graphic artist, what I would do is I would get tapes and I would dub the tape. Okay. And I would take this thing out, and this could be the inside of a cereal box. This could be the inside of a tissue box. It could be a manila folder. It could be vellum. It could be construction paper. I had amassed a collection of things that I could use. And I don't remember all of the albums that I dubbed, but I dubbed a lot of them. One of them I do remember. Here. So this is some of the music I was listening to at the time. And I think it's easy to denigrate some of this stuff, but I would submit to you that some of this music has more merit than I think it's generally given credit for. Okay. But one of the albums I dubbed was Band on the Run. Okay. And I remember how I did it because the cover is black, so I had to get a black background. I had to write on it in white. So I made it. And this is tough to do because without the internet, you have to go to a record store to pad a paper and draw. I can't imagine what the record store owner thought this kid was doing. Or on the Sunday paper, Band on the Run was for sale at Leechmere. You could say, oh, you gotta see a grain, but then you got to get the color and all, get everything right. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I got it done. And I remember one day I brought it to school, and I was in art class. Art was my favorite class in school, and we needed some music to play. And I had Band on the Run. Let's do art while playing Band on the Run. Okay, let's do that. And it was great. And the teacher thought it was fantastic, and the kids, they told me it was great. And as a kid who was not very popular with the school, this had a very transformative effect on me. So I started to think.
So you can switch it back. It's not sharing your screen.
It's not?
No, it doesn't make any difference. So,
You guys are not seeing my screen? Oh, I'm so sorry.
And then
Whatever.
We're seeing your
I am so
screen.
sorry, people on Zoom. Well, I'll try to be more
Seeing your
animated. this
screen.
way.
No, they can see you, but they can't see what you're showing as nicely
Okay.
as we.
Okay, but they can see the screen.
Yeah,
So-
maybe if we turn the lights down a little bit, they'll
Okay.
look better.
So because I had so much success with Band on the Run, I had this
It's good. It's good.
I had this great idea. And the great idea was I would go home and I had other tapes, I had more blank tapes and these things, and I would make multiple copies of Band on the Run. I would do multiple copies of the artwork, and then I would go back to school the next morning, and then I would sell copies of Band on the Run to anybody who wanted them. And I priced them in such a way that I would turn a profit. But I also priced it in such a way that it was below what you could buy it for in a record store. Everybody wins. That one landed me into the principal's office. Attleboro Middle School, Peter Thatcher. I hope that guy still remembers it. Okay, but anyway, it's getting about that time that we need to upgrade the Fisher receiver. So the Fisher receiver, this is what we were going to get. Okay, we wanted the Pioneer SX650. In fact, I still want one of those.
So the message is try turn your video on, and then it should be visible. If you
Try-
turn your video on. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
okay.
That's great.
That is actually my fault. I knew how to do that. I'm very sorry.
it's confused. Can it be
No
an
harm done.
Okay. That is the receiver I wanted, and in fact, I still want one of those. But to get these now, to get the capacitors replaced and all this, and the lamps always burn out, and the switches are. The one you don't want to get is the SX450, which is the lowest model one, because the knob on the left is not only the power switch, it's the switch for the speakers. So it's off, speaker A, speaker B, A plus B. They have not made that switch in 50 years. It always breaks. So anybody who has a Pioneer SX450 winds up just wiring it shut and powering it on from the power strip. Yeah, it works, but it's in LED, right? This is the receiver we wanted. But what stopped us from getting this was Consumer Reports came out. The Consumer Reports said that the Kenwood KR4070 was a better receiver. And it turned out that Lechmere, we had a Lechmere in Dedham, had the KR4070 for sale at a significantly lower price than the Pioneer SX650. So we thought this is the best thing that could happen to us. So we went to get the we went to get the Kenwood. That's what it looked like. And I was still pretty young, so my ability to process critical thinking was kind of limited. But I remember my dad let me carry the carton out to the car. And I remember at the time that feeling that something wasn't quite right. I couldn't put my finger on it, but now I would know because the box was much too light. And I had picked up the SX650 several times. That thing weighs a ton, okay? This thing, light. And I've had people now, I know people who repair these stereos, and they will tell me this, that who know such things, that there was a big difference between the way things were made back then before everybody sourced the same stuff out of China, just put their faceplate on the front. So Pioneer had a house look and a house sound. Kenwood, Techniques, you know, realistic, not so much with many different manufacturers. But here is a picture of some receivers. So this is the Pioneer at the top. Now take a look at the size of the power transistor and the filter capacitors. Okay, so this is a Kenwood, and you notice there's very little blank space between the circuit boards. It's a stuffed box. My repair friend says when he looks at a Kenwood or Techniques from the time, he calls it empty box syndrome. There's nothing in there. It's an empty box. Okay, the filter capacitor is a little bit smaller. The Techniques receivers from the time, if you remember, those look really cool, right? They have multicolored LEDs. When you open it up, I mean, look at those are the filter capacitors, and the bottom of the case wasn't even metal; it was a piece of press board. So if you know moisture over time, the thing would just kind of disintegrate on you. So there is a difference between
Look at the power transformer too.
Yeah. I mean, look at that versus and this is even more pronounced in Pioneer's larger receivers. And the big one, there's a toroidal transformer that takes up like half the case. Giant 4 filter capacitors on the side, and stuff just jammed in there. And the larger Kenwoods, they pretty much still look like that. And in fact, the Kenwood failed a couple of years later. And I hated to admit it to myself, but as flawed and as colored as the Fisher receiver was, I think I prefer the sound of the Fisher. Okay, wow. Now, I get to college. This is the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and I was an engineering major, just because. And I joke with a lot of my friends that if you have Asian parents, you have all these career opportunities open to you, okay? Oops, what is this?
I think we have to fix it.
Yes. please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, one sec.
Hang in there, Ed. We're gonna get this synchronized here.
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
This, can you, I hope, can everyone see this, the current
Yes.
slide well
I
on
do
this?
see
Zoom? Okay. Okay. All right, sorry about that. And Asians have this talk, we say things, I'm not even supposed to tell you this. But if you have Asian parents, you have all these career opportunities open to you. You can be a doctor, or you can be an engineer. You can be an engineer, or you can be a doctor. All these career opportunities are open to you, okay? It was pretty obvious early on that I did not have the intellectual capacity to be a doctor. So I became an engineer. My dad was an engineer. I would follow in his footsteps, and he would be proud of me. And I can remember the day that my SAT scores came in. It was a dark day in the house because my English score, I got like a 710 on the English, and I got like a 440 on the math. And for a time, my mother had convinced herself that the SAT people had transposed the two scores. That she was going to contact the SAT people and demand that they fix this. Okay, but I have no idea how I got into a number 4 ranked electrical engineering program in this country. No idea. But it was those were not good years because I was just overmatched in classes and I had no idea what was going on. Pretty soon I was just depressed and walking around campus all day long. So one day it was raining and I had to get from this part of campus to another part. Illinois campus, huge, massive place. I'm just going around photographing. I was working for the school newspaper at the time. I was a reporter for the Daily Illini. I had the cap with the pen and all this. And I ducked into a building and now mine isn't working.
There it goes.
There's a little bit of a delay. There is? Okay.
You got
There it is. Okay. So that is the music building at the University of Illinois. I've since learned that the music department at the U of I is considered quite good. In the Big Ten, I think Indiana is probably the one you hear about the most. But Illinois had a very good music school, enough to support 3 full-time symphony orchestras, student symphony orchestras. They played in Krannert Hall, which is the main hall. George Schulte really liked recording there. And if you were a student, you could get in for 50 cents. So I started to learn the basic repertoire. And this is the music library. And I just got up there one day, and it's a little bit hard to see, but if you gave your ID to the librarian, this is a little key. There's a key that you would put, and you pull this and you open. It was like a Kenner close and play. This record player would come out, had a ceramic cartridge, a little tin can with a headphone amp on it, and probably the worst headphones you've ever seen in your life. So when I was a kid in elementary school in the 70s, they would give you a cassette tape to listen to whatever the Bears singing, and it would be headphones with plastic ear cuffs. And the air conditioning in this building was not good, so it gave a whole new meaning to the term "sweating to the oldies." Right? So this was my audio system for 4 years. Okay, and I remember at the time, because you didn't know which one they were going to assign you to. Some of these ceramic cartridges were not very good. Go in there with coins in my pocket. And the reason you need the coins is because if it wouldn't track, you'd sit there, you put the coins on top of the head shelf to make it track a little bit better. I have no idea how many records I ruined during this time, but I discovered some things like that record collection, easily 10,000 records. 20,000, I think, also easy. And what was fascinating to me when I first got in there, not one top 40 record in that collection. Like there was music beyond top 40, and not only that, they had multiple versions of the same piece of music, and sometimes even multiple copies of multiple versions of the same. What is this? What is going on? So there was music beyond top 40, and my musical taste began to change. So it took a long time for me to put 1 and 1 and 1 together and get 3. Okay, so I'm in a music school. Okay, they have records. There's a library right next to me that has musical scores, and there are practice rooms upstairs. Okay, one day I was listening to Rubinstein playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, and I think I might be able to handle that. So I checked out the thing, and I made a copy of the first page. Copies were a nickel. I didn't know if I wanted to invest the full 20 cents to play the whole piece. So I just got the first page, took it upstairs to the practice rooms. There are 5 floors of practice rooms you can provide. And those are the 4 pages from 1983 or so, still sitting on my piano today. One night, that is one of the performance pianos at Smith Music Hall. It's a Steinway B, very nice, it's locked. one night I was walking there late at night, piano was unlocked. I was nervous as hell. Okay, there's nobody there, it's not late at night, but just to walk on there, like, the way to do it is you just own it, right? You just walk up, put the, I'm supposed to be here, yeah. And I remember thinking, this is a much better piano than the ones in the piano practice. It's just like high-end audio, right? You get used to something and you see something better, it opens up a whole new world. So my musical taste began to change. So the first classical music piece that I became learned and addicted to was, I don't know.
William Tell Overture.
Oh, come on. What is the first piece of classical music that you get used to?
The organ symphony.
Even before that.
Beethoven's Fifth Symphony?
Oh, come on. This is the easiest question I'm going to ask you.
Oh, no.
It is, of course. You guys are gonna be-
1812.
Oh, yeah. And not only is it the 1812 overture, it has to be this one, right? This is the only one that's worth listening to. Audio's toughest challenge in a close-up of the grooves. Okay, so on this record, it's pretty funny because if you look at it's one of the early digital recordings. They spend the entire gatefold here talking about how they recorded the cannon, and they weren't actually at cannonballs; they were blanks. But the sound of the cannon shots blew out the windows on campus in the university's campus. Okay, and they were proud of this. Okay, and people were proud of the record because if you know the 1812 overture, okay, we can look at this afterwards. If you know the piece, you can actually see where the cannon shots are. You can see them; they're there. Okay, and people would. What's that? Mercury or Tellur? The Tellur. No, see see your generation before me. See, this is the one that you're probably going to grow up with, the Garrard. Okay, this one's pretty good, but in terms of the cannon shots, there's no comparison. But people would say things like, you know, it ripped the stylus off my turntable. It broke my woofer. It clipped and it destroyed my. And the thing is, people were never upset when this happened. It was almost like a badge of honor. Yeah, that record destroyed my audio system, right? I've never actually seen an actual case where it ripped the stylus off the card. I think that's an exaggeration. Rather, what would happen is weeks later, you'd be playing a record and you discover that it didn't sound very good anymore. It did some damage to the stylus. But I was talking to Pat on the way down, but the Carver had an amp. It was an M2.0, I think. It was the cube, 9-pound cube. It was a little cube that weighed like that, but it output 200 watts per channel. Right? Neat trick, right? So one day, my friend Herm came over. We said, Herm, we're gonna play this as loud as we can. His parents were out of the house. So we did it, okay? And when it got to the last cannon shot, those of you who have ever heard this sound will never forget it. The voice coil of the woofer bottoming out against the magnet, it makes a transient, like a clapping sound. It's so loud, it makes you blink. Like it actually has a physical effect on you. And so I had to lunge to get that, turn that down, because I was bottoming out the woofers on that. So, wow. Oh, and they had warnings, right? And those were the cannon shots. Now, at the time, many of you read that Penguin Guide to that British-centric thing that they only recommend British things. Okay, so of course they hated this recording because there's an American label, an American orchestra. You know, it didn't have a chance. This is my favorite excerpt from that review. Okay, if you need a recording of canon plus 1812, then this review was for you. The flip side was the Capriccio Italiano, of course. In the Capriccio, there's no canon, so the engineer substitute the bass drum instead, which is true. But when the bass drum comes in, it's like way, way too loud. Okay, so, and by the way, on these, because we're all audiophiles, I had to try to collect all the different covers of these. I think there's one more that I don't have. It's also been on CD. So my musical taste did begin to evolve. This was the toughest slide in the whole thing to assemble, just to show you some representative things that mean a lot to me. So the Kleiber, Beethoven 5 and 7, I cannot tell you why his recordings are so compelling. Those of you who listened to it, I can't stop listening. It's like right from the start. I don't know what he's doing. What's he doing? Right? I think it has something to do with rhythm. He was very good at rhythmic pieces, and the Beethoven 5 and 7 were that way. So the Brahms here, and this is the puzzle here. I don't really know what drove me to this recording and why I endears me to it so much. I think it's because it's the first one that I heard. Today, I think this is a middle of the road Brahms here. It's good, but they had so many copies of these, and I started collecting these too. Those of you who know such things, there's the half tulip and the full tulip and the so and so and so on. I have 3 different versions of these. Good luck trying to collect all the versions of this one. So the Schulte Mahler 8, this one in multiple covers as well. I didn't get Mahler at first. And I remember being angry, like, why is this so highly regarded? Because in the 80s, this started to become a thing. Everybody does Mahler these days. And I remember just almost being mad at it. Like, why? Why are people listening to this? And so I just kept listening to it and listening to it. And pretty soon, I couldn't stop listening to it. So in any short list of great Mahler recordings, the Schulte 8 is going to be on there. Even people who don't like this recording will say, yeah, I get it. Okay. People who were at this recording session, the closing chord of that first movement, they said was quite possibly the loudest sound that they had ever heard anywhere in their lives. And people said they were walking out of there talking to themselves. So Schulte is an extroverted, exuberant, the excitement in every bar type of conductor. Didn't work for some pieces, but it did work for this one. Rubinstein playing the Chopin. Yes.
I think it was about that recording that a music file friend of mine said you could hear the engineers turning down the gain at the end.
Yeah.
Well, the way you do it is turn it down before the end. So
yeah. There's another recording. There's a Stokowski recording, and people who were alive said that that was the loudest sound they ever heard in their lives because, you know, he's Stokey. He does weird things, right? He holds the note. Okay, well, we're well past what Mahler wrote now. You can stop now. But then he ratchets it up more. And just when you think the intensity can't get any more, he ratchets it up again. And the people said that their head almost hurt from that last chord in that first movement. I had the opportunity to see Bernstein conducting the Shostakovich 7 in Chicago. And one of the stupidest things I've ever done is I turned that down. People who were at that concert said it was the same thing. That middle section of the march in the first movement, they said, just when you think it can't get any more attention, Bernstein turns the screws on you. You're sweating in your seat from all of this, right? The opposite of that is Rubinstein playing the Chopin nocturnes. There have been 3 great Chopin nocturne cycles that I've been, in my opinion. This one is the one I grew up on, but there are 2 I think that are even better. One is the Claudio Rao and Phillips, and the best one is the Ivan Moravec on multiple labels now. Because the labels aren't a thing anymore. The greatest concert I've ever been to in my life was a recital by Ivan Moravec in Cincinnati. He played the second piano sonata by Chopin. I walked out of there talking to myself. What was that? What did I just hear? So there were multiple copies of this thing on the shelf. Rachmaninoff, Touche, Richter. Okay, and it was the same thing. After I got done listening to this, I'm like, what is he doing? And the thing about Richter is, even when he's bad, you still listen to the end. Like with most bad recordings, you kind of turn it off. Even when Richter's bad, because I want to see what he does next, right? So that was one. And okay, so Argerich playing Tchaikovsky 1. Okay, there are 3 great Tchaikovsky 1s by Argerich. Okay, the Du Soir, the Abato, and the Kondrashin. I've never quite understood why. It must have been some sort of deal they made that they advertised Kondrashin on this thing. But if you haven't heard this thing lately, the last 30 seconds of that recording, probably the most exciting thing you'll ever hear. It's a semi-chromatic progression from the bottom of the keyboard all the way to the top, and taken at an unbelievable velocity and unbelievable volume. So I know the aficionados in this room. I know the problem with that recording. So many wrong notes, right? That you hear them clunkers all the way, but you know what? It makes it more human. I mean, the Abato is better technically. I have no problem with people who love that one, but to me, it's always going to be the Kondrashin. And this last one, do you ever have a record on your shelf that's so good you're afraid to listen to it? Do we have one of those? Yeah, this is one of those for me. Okay, you don't listen to it very often. You wait for a special occasion, but if somebody asks you where it is, you know exactly where it is on the shelf. Okay. So to hear what Puccini does here, unbelievable. It's supposed to be a story of unrequited love. So it's something that everybody in this room has experienced before, right? We love someone more than they love us. Okay, and once Puccini has you on the ropes, he doesn't let go, right? He just keeps making it worse and worse and worse. And you go to these performances, you see people milling around in the hall around by the second act, and you're like, "What? I don't understand. You're bored. You don't like opera?" And they're like, "No, I can't be in there anymore. No, I can't take it anymore." Right? But Puccini's genius was, a normal writer would be okay with just the unrequited love. He gets around the other side of things, and it's actually a story about both sides. And it's a story about how we're sometimes the most cruel to the people who love us the most. And for me, this one captures that better than any of the others. I have a massive collection of Madame Butterflies. I will listen to them all, but I don't listen to this one. I can't bear it. It's too painful to listen to. Again, very difficult slide for me to sample. I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to show this. So I used to go to auctions a lot, go to estate auctions, and I'd stay till the end because by the end the auctioneer is just ready. They just want to get rid of stuff. So towards the end of this one auction, I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, and there were boxes full of things that nobody had bid on. And he said, "Who'll give me $1 for it?" I'm looking around. Okay, fine. I'll take it for $1. It was junk. Okay, but at the bottom of the pile, I found this. Someone by hand has transcribed and reduced Mozart's Magic Flute for high school play in its entirety.
Wow.
And in the preface, there are suggestions for cuts. There are suggestions for transpositions in case we have people who cannot sing that high. But I'll let you look at this. The letter in the front is somebody made this as a Christmas gift for somebody, an Easter gift for somebody, and it's dated 1929.
You step to the center so people can
Yes.
see.
Well, he's.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
1929, the whole opera. So
Wow.
amazing. Okay, so I get out of college. Surprisingly, I graduated with a degree. With my first job, I got my first real audio system, and it's here. I found it. It's in the basement. It doesn't work anymore. Right? So I can remember at the time when CDs first came out, these things were very expensive. And this was on the shelf at Montgomery Ward's for $169 in the audio department. Okay? I didn't have $169. I was busy paying off debt. But for my birthday, my parents gave me $700 as a gift, an enormous amount of money at the time. Okay, so did I pay down my debt or so this became my audio system for years. And because the right channel did not drop out, because it didn't wear out like tapes, I love CDs from day one. I just did. So this was my audio system, and I was an inside sales clerk for an industrial firm. It was a very, very difficult job. To just get yelled at all day long and somebody else screwed up. But I was just dreaming all day long about what am I going to listen to when I get back. I can't afford CDs, but maybe I can go, rent some at the library. I've since learned from people who know such things that this is one of the very worst CD players that Sony ever made, and I believe it because they advertise it as, oh, you could walk around with it, you could listen, you could hook it up to your home system, you could do all sorts of things. Well, the anti-skip protection on these early units was so bad. If you so much as move the volume, it would skip. So when I first started, I had these visions. I'm going to go on the beach and listen to all the Schumann symphonies. I'll spend 2 hours doing that. That experiment did not last very long. Okay, so I bought my first house in 1991, and I remember this to this day. It is Jack English's review of the PSP Alpha and Stereophile. And the idea, I had been to high-end audio stores before. I lived for a short time in Lexington, Kentucky, and I did go to see Jim Teal at Teal Audio when he was active. Marvelously kind gentleman, very patient with me, let me sit there as long as I wanted. And it was obvious, high school kid, me walking, I was never going to be able to afford this stuff. He was very kind to me. Passed away recently. I remember seeing one of the last talks that he gave was at Ensemble Audio in Nashville. And again, very kind gentleman, just be very patient with you. But the idea that you could get a high-end audio speaker for $199 was beyond me. And so I went to my local, dealer, and they had them. I had some CDs, and this is amazing. This is better than anything I've ever heard before. This is the receiver I had at the time. It has since failed. It blows a fuse, and one channel is out. I went around with a voltmeter. I looked at the output transistors. They're bad. I got replacement output transistors, restarted, put them in there, put a new fuse in, turned it on, same thing happened. I'm kind of stymied after that. So if anybody here wants to tackle this, work something out. So then I started to upgrade the system. And then I ran into this thing that a lot of people run into, which is sometimes the upgrade works, and sometimes it's maybe not so good. So the NAD receiver I upgraded to the so I went from a 20-watt receiver to an 80-watt integrated amp. It's classified as a power amp, but it's got these gain controls on it, so you can use it as an integrated amp. I like that. I don't like putting preamps and things. But I discovered the whole thing about ignore all those power differences. They're all the same. So it doesn't really sound that much different than the 20-watt amp. Parasound is very conservative in their power ratings, but then so is NAD. The big mistake I made was upgrading to these Apogee Centaurus minors. Robert Harley, I think it's Robert, yeah, he writes really well. And I almost memorized this review back then, but he describes it so well, I could almost hear the review. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to hear that. I want to hear that too. So I went from a $199 system because what audiophile is going to take you seriously if you have a $199 speaker? No one's going to take you seriously. But they might take me seriously if I spend $1,200 on a pair of speakers, which I did. I saved up and I bought them. And I don't know if anybody, they were in Randolph, Mass for a while, I think, and it never got used to them. I never liked them, and it actually caused me to stop listening for a time. That's probably the worst purchase I've ever made. So today, this is what I have, and you'll notice the best audio component in the room is the piano. So, I don't buy really expensive stuff. I think if I were to amass enough money to really purchase a first-rate piece of audio gear, I'd probably buy another piano instead. You know, that's where my biases are. But those are the Magnapan 1.6 QRs, and there are 3 criticisms labeled against Magnapans. Number 1, they don't have any bass. Number 2, they're really hard on your amplifier. And number 3, they're very placement sensitive. Are those things true? Not only are those things true, I'm going to add a 4th one. I think these things are too bright. I've always thought they were too bright. I mean, they give you a big power resistor to put in series with the tweeter. They wouldn't do that unless they knew the thing was too bright. Okay, but you know what? It doesn't matter. The human voice, you will be convinced that there is a human being in front of you singing to you. So because I'm taking care of this cat, those are going in the basement because they're giant scratching posts. So I have a pair of original Martin Marshall design built Epos ES11s. Not the Chinese ones. I bought the Chinese ones. They're not as good. Got to get the original British ones. Okay, so what went right? What went right is this. The PSB Alphas, that is a KN850T. The interesting thing about that amplifier that everybody quotes is you can switch from triode mode to ultralinear mode on the fly. And of course, as we are audiophiles, we must say we always prefer the triode mode. Right? We just say those things. Okay? The A/B comparison is impossible because I don't know what they did with that switch. When you switch to triode mode, it's like 10 dB louder. I don't know. It's impossible to kind of, so you think, oh, wow, triodes aren't weak, they're strong, right? They're so loud. But what you don't realize is that's as high as they go. It doesn't matter what you do with the gain control, it's always felt that high. The Project Debut 3 turntable is the only turntable I've ever owned that's never given me a problem. Okay, I like that. NAD's integrated amplifier, just as a backup. Other things that went right. Interestingly enough, the things that made me happiest were the cheap things. So here, these are the Sennheiser HD414. It's hard to believe these things came out in 1968. I mean, for someone who only listened to crappy headphones, I went into a hi-fi store one day and put these things on. Oh my goodness. These things have been surpassed sonically. I don't think they've been surpassed in terms of comfort. It's very hard to rate headphones because everybody has a different tolerance. So this idea of having this thing on your head, and I'm apparently very sensitive to this. This is the thing that makes me feel like there's nothing on my head at all. And I've tried other headphones, including Sennheiser's new ones. I've tried the HD580s and the 600s, but instead of going to the on-ear design, they're going to the around-the-ear design. So you feel like there's just, yeah, it sounds great, but I can't get used to it. So these are the headphones I listen to. I have Grados as well. I think the Grados sound very good as well, but those are very uncomfortable in my head. I don't know how those feel. There's a saying in audio that there are Sennheiser people and there are Grado people, and never the twain shall meet. I think Shakespeare wrote that one. Yeah. And of course, the best audio system of all is no audio system at the University of Illinois. Okay, what went wrong? Well, that was probably the big thing at the Apogee Centaurus minors. I later went to Apogee dealers and I listened to the stages and the measures and all of this, and they're all kind of that shrill, hard. I don't understand why people love that sound, but they do. What else went wrong? For some reason, when someone was in my house one day about 10 years ago, I said, "Do you want those speakers?" And it wasn't even an audio person. As soon as I said it, I'm like, "Why did I just say that?" They said, "Yeah, I'll take them," and I have no idea where they went. Oh. Yeah, I gave them away. So I have the new Alpha B ones, which are better, but I kind of wish they had them back. All right. The last thing that went wrong, and this is probably going to be the most controversial thing that I say today. Okay, so are you ready? All right, so this is going to take some explaining. All right. I have wanted one of these things since they came out in 1978. Okay, I remember the discussion at the time wasn't about the product itself. A lot of it was this audacity that somebody would have this sort of courage to charge $4,000 for a turntable. How can this be? So for 40 or 50 years, I've been wondering what this is like. I've been expecting this religious experience. Okay, so finally I thought, well, you know what? The Project AB3 worked well. I'm just going to buy one of these. So I got one off of, he was a semi-dealer in Canada. He's still around. And right away, there were things that were wrong. The tone arm could not be balanced no matter what. Okay. I had to put 9 grams of blue tack on the tone arm shell to get it to balance to 0. Obviously, something is just very wrong. And yes, for those who know such things, I'm very much aware that it's not the correct tone arm. It's a Project 9cc carbon tone arm. It's not the Lin tone arm. The other thing is there was no output but hum. So I eventually traced that to the tone arm cable. There are 5 pins, 2 to the left, 2 to the right, and the ground. 3 of the 5 pins are not making continuity. Okay, so I got a new tone arm cable, and it works. The tone arm is probably screwing things up a little bit. And the thing is a darn trampoline. Does anybody have one of these? If you walk on the floor, you cannot walk on the floor. Okay, you can't, it skips, okay? And Ivor had this thing where you have to put it on a light, rigid table, and it has to be the lightest table possible, because everybody's doing it wrong, they're putting it on it. I did that, it still skips. Okay? It could be the tone arm, I don't know. If anybody here is skilled at setting one of these things up, I'm in Southern New Hampshire, come on over, I'll buy you lunch. Okay. What's next? Well, I decided to really learn the ring. Okay, so I started with the Schulte ring, as everybody else does, and just for old time's sake, I did it on a portable. It's good to do it on a portable if you can get up and walk around. And Siegfried, right? The guy sings for an hour and a half. Okay, got it, right? Find her already, okay? So I listened to the Schulte, and I listened to the Levine, which I think is underrated, and I listened to the Carillon, which is a little patchwork because it was recorded over too long a period of time, and there were 2 O10s, 2 Brunhildes, and 2 Siegfrieds. It's patchwork. So I had somebody say to me, "You spent 16 hours listening to a bunch of Germans standing around singing about a ring?" And I said, "No, I did it 3 times. I listened to 50 hours of a bunch of Germans standing around singing about a ring." So what I did this year is I got in line for Bayreuth, and I thought I could just get in. There are 500,000 people who want to get into that, whatever, that 2,000 seat, whatever. And a lot of people cancel up. They say the average wait time is 8.5 years. I cannot imagine there are 500,000 people who want to go do this, but they do. So I just got my letter saying I didn't make it this year, so I guess I just keep waiting. Other thing that's next is that's my dad. He's in that wheelchair permanently now, and it turned out he was teaching calligraphy in his later years. So it turned out that the arts were in the family the whole time, but they just didn't want to acknowledge that. But his hands shake too much to do the calligraphy. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to assemble this audio system or something close to it. So I have the turntable. I found it at the local swap shed. Somebody just dumped it there, and it's in good condition, except the dust cover is all fogged up and chapped. It's still a lot of this. All right. So for me, the answer to the question is, why do we do this? For me, music saved me from that life of reality of college. That's what it did for me, and that's part of the reason why I strive. So what have I learned? I've been the happiest in my life when I had my bad audio systems. Okay. Upgrading often makes it worse. And the last thing that I've learned, and I'll leave you with this thought, in audio, as in life, sometimes we're happiest when we don't know it. What your play with these toys, whatever you have.
Question?
Yes?
Well, one question, one comment. I don't think you described, except for showing the album, which Madame a Butterfly you were talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the Scotto Bergonzi EMI. Barbaroli is conducting. I'm sorry about yes.
I can see the EMI.
Yeah. There's another Scotto Butterfly later with Lauren Mizell, but because Lauren Mizell is such a weird guy, it's a weird recording.
Yeah.
Most people would say it's the Tibaldi Bergonzi with Tullio Sorokin conducting on Decca. But I find that the Scotto is better for little reasons. And I'll give you one of them. Early in the first act, Puccini instructs Madame Butterfly to laugh, to giggle. And Tibaldi sounds like a maniacal middle-aged woman yelling at her husband. And she really does sound like a little girl. And we're talking little things at this point. There's 3 or 4 little moments like that. And Barbaroli, who doesn't love Barbaroli? Yeah. Yes, sorry.
The comment is, of interest. My first Radio Shack purchase was their $29.95 FM tuner. And it did the job. And in those days, I lived in Dorchester with a straight line of sight south. And in my ignorance of anything, including engineering, which I ended up doing, I purposely somehow misaligned that $30 tuner for maximum sensitivity. Maybe fidelity be damned, I don't know. And I was pulling in Newport News, Virginia on FM with that tuner.
Was that only after dark or was it all day?
No, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I mean,
after
I could
dark,
only
you
pick up New York on my Sherwood, which replaced it.
Yeah. Yeah. Questions, comments?
Did you ever see an AR turntable?
I did. I don't know if I played with one enough to make.
Because that was supposed to be the turntable, that minimalist turntable that did everything right.
Right, but the British magazines hated that turntable. There were always negative reviews.
Why?
Because it's American.
Oh.
It's awful. I saw a review once. I think it was this review that says, we played Shaka Khan, and you cannot tell that Shaka Khan is female on the AR turntable. On a Lin, it's fine, you know.
Oh, my.
Yes.
Did you ever play with the linear tracking turntables at all?
You know what? I thought that was going to be the thing. I thought, you know, in 10 years, I'm going to get a linear tracking turntable because they'll have it perfected by then. And they never really did. The same thing with the laser. Remember, there was a laser beam that would read the groove. And I thought in 10 years, yeah, that's going to be, but that never kind of went anywhere.
Yeah. I have a Techniques one. It's linear tracking. It's the size of an album cover, but a little thicker. And you can tip it over upside down and still play.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about a 45-degree angle on this one. Yeah.
So Ed, do you like to continue collecting the physical media, or are you shifting over to streaming now?
We were having this talk on the way up here that I told you have a server and I have thousands of CDs. Who's going to do all that for me? Is there a fast way?
All you have to do is copy.
Yeah, but it makes mistakes, it miscategorizes things, it gets the wrong album cover artwork, and then you got to go back and. At some point you will have to have. But I'm noticing there's a revival towards CDs. I mean, these boxes. There's a Richter box that's like the size of an accordion that will keep you busy for the next 2 years. I don't know if there's a George Zell box that Sony has just come out with. 129 CDs in there with the original cover artwork and miniaturized and the liner notes in the back in tiny print and a coffee table book on top. Somebody at Sony must have loved George Zell in a box that you could probably brain a burglar on with this thing. Okay, but the thing is, if you have even a passing interest in George Zell or the Cleveland Orchestra, 129 CDs on Amazon when I bought it was $106. Shipped. So the stuff is cheap.
We had a guest on Shop Talk when the radio show, who told us that George Zell took all the bass out of all the Cleveland recordings.
Really?
Yeah. So if you hear, I'd be curious. Anybody listens to George Zell? There's a bass drum there. It'd be nice to hear about it, but most of his recordings were the bass was eliminated on purpose because George didn't like it.
Okay. Zell was the original conductor slated for the Schulte ring. And they fired him because he was too much of a pain in the ass. I want these singers, I want this many rehearsals. And Decca was like, we have never done this before, okay? We're just coming out of the 78 era. Nobody knows if they're even gonna buy 20 albums and we don't know. We can't be putting up with this guy. Yes.
I believe there are companies you can hire that will swallow your CD collection and rip them to your favorite format.
I spent 10 years doing mine. Took me 10 years of doing thousands of importing thousands of my CDs, which I kept. I gave away the ones that were duplicated that I could and I actually kept. I played all my LPs also that were not on CD. I had to play the LPs to get them into the iTunes.
So I'm thinking, so let's say I spend months doing all my CDs, and then next year they decide to change formats and go with something else.
Well,
you know, it could happen.
But Ken's
got a server. I mean, he was like pulling stuff up on his iPad. I get it. I mean, but these are fun, aren't they? The boxes.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't like what they do is, so here's an Argerich box. Who doesn't love Martha Argerich? Okay, this is what I don't like. So on this, okay, Clyburn conducts 5 and 7. 5 and 7 should be on separate discs. I don't care. They need to be on separate discs because the album cover artwork was different on the 2 discs, and this is a classic recording. Don't put them on one and pick a cover. Okay, but even worse, on this one, okay, this disc has Shostakovich and Haydn piano concertos. Okay, all right, but it's fine. Okay, and this is the original back. Okay, and in fine print at the very bottom also includes Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1.
What?
I'm like, what? What? Among the 3, which is the more famous? Of course, it's going to be the Tchaikovsky, and it's not even listed on the back. You have to go to the liner notes to find out whether it's the Dubois or the Abato. Why? I'll pay the extra. This is for enthusiasts anyway.
Wow, somebody made a mistake.
There's 3 of them in there, like also includes, and then the thing includes. That's the thing I want to hear.
That's funny.
Woo. Anything else? I'm sorry I made the pizza cold.
Sorry. This is better.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we have any questions in the crowd?
Yeah, let me just check. Any questions from the Zoom folks? Chris, Gary, John, Pete, Bill?
I mean, many of us
Looks
have
like
memories like that.
Yeah.
And I grew up listening to, part of it was listening to the Red Sox on the radio before television. We have a certain advantage. Those of us who grew up before television have a certain advantage because we have a view of the world as audio and video as Johnny come lately kind of.
Yeah.
Well, a good radio sportscaster can put you there.
Yeah.
They're pretty rare, but it's like I felt like I was in the stadium.
Absolutely. But I learned classical music from the Lone Ranger.
Okay.
Because and you can get all the radio shows on from old time radio catalog, but every entrance, every scene melted into the next scene on the radio with a piece of classical. It could be Verdi Requiem, could be Mozart Requiem, could be Donna Diana Overture, could be something from Beethoven, Wagner, and it did in such a way that it taught you this is how classical music helps you with your emotions. Go from one emotion to the next.
Yeah,
So it turns out that's a great way to learn about classical music.
When I first started listening in the music library, I didn't know what to listen to. So I did what any self-respecting 19-year-old boy would do. I picked them based on the album covers.
Yeah, of course.
So after I'd finished listening to every Scheherazade, and Carmen, and Belshazzar's Feast, right? And then I settled down to it. There is a La Boheme, the Anna Moffo, Richard Tucker La Boheme, five-star conducting Marseille. If you have that box set, there is a 12 by 12 full color photo of Anna Moffo's smiling face on the back of that thing. Oh, be still my heart. And I don't even like that La Boheme, but I have it now.
That's great.
Yes.
Ed, I understand you have a video of you conducting. What's that about? Did you?
No, I have a video of me talking about a beginner's perspective on the art of conducting. And Ken has asked me to come back and talk about that. I don't know, because it's really humiliating just what this guy is. He was one of these tough professors, and he was proud of the fact that he was, he was a dick. He knew he was a dick. He celebrated being a dick. He wanted you to know it. But there was a method to, you have to know everything. You have to be prepared, for everything. There was a method to it. But maybe there was a way he could have done it without being so cool. You ever see the movie Whiplash? Yeah, the drummer. Yeah, he was that guy. Yeah.
So by way of background, Ed did not go to Dartmouth for his master's in musicology or conducting. That you had other. You were doing a writing. Yeah, writing program. But you took this course, something of a dilettante, and
I conducted Mozart's 29th Symphony for my final attempt.
Oh boy!
There were 8 people in the class. Okay, by week 2, there were 3 of us left. 2 geniuses from Shanghai and me. Okay? So I'm not used to being, I'm kind of used to being here, but I was here. So I was the guy who got picked on all the time.
It's
That
a
was
course
my,
for professional
that was my role.
musicians, right? This was a course to train
Yes.
conductors in professional
Yeah.
conducting. So it was not a survey course for music lovers, right? I mean, that's what might be missing here. So Ed went into this kind of an innocent abroad.
And he would, you'd be
They was
conducting,
not treated.
and yeah, he wore these
lightly.
dress shoes that had the heels on, so you hear the click, click, click of the heels. Oh, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. And he would just walk up, he would slam the score shut. Edward, call me Edward. What are clarinets doing in bar 271? He's an Italian guy. And why? And he'd be like, and he would slam the score shut. Next, out, you're out. Next was one of his favorite words. Next, yeah.
Like you're
No,
fired.
I studied all weekend. I did what you told me to do. I know what's in the score. I didn't know the answer. If you didn't answer fast enough, next. If you answered fast enough but with an attitude, next.
That's a shame.
You can watch the video. It's on his YouTube channel. It's not long. It's excellent.
All right, I need to get us all into pizza. So
Okay.
thank
All
you so
right.
much.
We'll stop.
You guys have been great. Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess you can see the dedication. Oh.
So on
So,
first, so don't wait up for me.
So, first of all, today we have a special dedication of the meeting to Nick, who actually brought the pizza. Nick, thank you very much for all the years of leadership and dedication to the club. Really critical.
And want to read the cake? What it says there?
We're not entirely clear on the dates here. VAS president, 2015 to 2025.
10 years.
Well, someone should have a knife.
We got that.
Yes.
We got that.
Some cutlery right here.
Your knife is
It's not a big knife. but-
better than mine. What do you propose?
Somebody else.
Probably the same thing.
Give me one of those plates. How to do this? That's how you do it.
Have you ever seen the ring cycle done by, what's his name, Pierre Boulez?
I have not. Is that one of those modern ones? I'm hearing,
Well,
I'm hearing
no.
Boulez.
It wasn't that, it's embarrassing how he changed the stage direction.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but at least it looks like rock. And it was the first, it's well recorded on video, so the whole, you can actually watch it like a miniseries.
You know, Seguin is doing the ring at the Met in 27.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I actually did the math. It's cheaper to go to Bayreuth.
but you can't get in Byron.
To stay in New York for a week
Yeah.
and to get the tickets, it's actually cheaper to go to Germany.
Oh.